Hey guys, tonight we're waking up in a Viking longhouse, and you might not survive the first day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your city and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to cold plank boards beneath you. The longhouse is silent except for distant snoring and the faint hiss of dying embers. You push back the wool blanket and swing your legs over the edge of your sleeping pallet. Your feet hit the floor like 2 blocks of ice. Viking homes have no underfloor insulation, and herbs to ward off drafts are more legend than fact. Historians still debate whether coastal longhouses ever had proper foundation trenches or simply sat on packed earth. Your first task is fire. No flint and steel magic here. Well, flint and steel are exactly what you'll use, along with dried fungus and char cloth you prepared yesterday. You strike the steel against flint, breathing softly so you don't blow away the tiny ember. It flares, then flickers, then grows. You coax flames into a tinder bundle until the hearth roars. This morning ritual is more crucial than breakfast. Without fire, your family won't have hot porridge, and their temper will be sharper than an iron axe. Speaking of porridge, you scoop barley grains into a heavy bronze pot. Barley was the staple of Viking households, more common than wheat. A rare find of imported rye in northern Norway suggests trade routes extended farther than once believed. Archaeologists still argue how so many grains reached the fjords. You pour water, stir, and balance the pot above the glowing coals. Steam curls into the chilly air, fogging your breath and warming your hands. While the porridge cooks, you chase down yesterday's leftover flatbread, the dough once shaped into rounds, now halved by hungry children. You slip it on the fire's side to crisp. In another house, a lady might have baked in a communal oven, but Viking families baked at home on embers. An obscure tip: they sometimes used seaweed ashes to speed up fermentation in dough, a practice scarcely recorded and much disputed by food historians. With breakfast sizzling, you pad outside to fetch water. A bucketful from the nearby stream must be hauled over slippery stones. You brace yourself against the cold draft, careful not to drop the wooden bucket. On your way back, you glance at the cattle in the pen, a couple of cows and goats trained to follow your whistle. You give each a friendly pat. Caring for livestock is your responsibility as much as tending the hearth. Men may boast of raids, but you manage the real wealth at home. Inside again, you stir the thickening barley mush, ladling it into carved wooden bowls. Your husband finally rouses, grumbling about needing mead to fully wake up. You tease him, reminding him that mead is for celebrations, not mornings, though a spoonful of honey is rumored to settle the stomach before a longship voyage. Scholars still dispute whether honey was daily fare or rare delicacy. By the time the children tumble in, their hair tangled from sleep, the longhouse is alive. Chickens peck at stray barley grains on the floor, a dog growls softly at a stray cat, and your mother-in-law knits by the hearth, complaining about the price of trade pelts. You handle each arrival with a smile, ladle porridge to tiny hands, tousle hair, and shoo away animals. It's chaos, but it's your masterpiece. This morning's sequence combines the practical with the ritual. Lighting the hearth was more than a chore. It symbolized life returning after winter's death. Vikings believed hearth fire protected families from Jotun, the giants of frost and chaos. Modern historians still argue over how literal this belief was, but you feel its weight every dawn. At last, the table cleared. You sweep the floor with a twig broom and tie your braided hair back. There's no time to rest. The rest of your day begins now. The porridge bowls are scraped clean. A few sticky fingers are wiped on tunics. A child is scolded for feeding flatbread to the dog, and your husband vanishes outside with the rest of the men to fix fishing nets. Now the real work begins. You stack the empty bowls and brush crumbs into your palm. There's no sink, no soap. Dishes are scrubbed with moss, rinsed in a wooden trough with ash water. The water smells faintly of smoke, and your hands sting from yesterday's burns. But this is just another morning in the Viking kitchen. Archaeologists have found carbon traces on dishware that suggest ash was a common cleaning agent, a kind of proto-detergent, though whether it truly sterilized anything remains up for debate. You move on to grinding grain. The cornstone is heavy, your posture awkward, but rhythm is everything. You kneel, place a handful of barley between the stones, and push, rotate, push. The sound is dull and repetitive, soothing, even. You've done this so many times your arms follow the motion without thought. Still, your back protests, your fingers ache, and you dream, not for the first time, of having an extra daughter just for this task. While you grind, you keep one eye on the toddler who's now halfway up the ladder to the sleeping loft. You gently call his name. He laughs and climbs faster. You sigh, abandon the grindstone, and pluck him down like a sack of flour. The baby starts crying. She wants milk. You sit, shift your tunic, and nurse her, barley dust still on your arms. Multitasking is not a modern invention. Outside, someone's chicken has escaped into your side yard. Again, you throw on your shawl, step into your boots, and chase it down, the baby now slung on your hip with a linen wrap. The chicken flaps indignantly as you scoop it up. You hand it back to its owner, who nods and says, "She likes your side of the fence better." You both laugh. Back inside, it's time to salt the fish. Your husband left 3 trout in a wooden basin, cleaned but still smelling like river. You pack them in salt, layer by layer, then seal the barrel with cloth. Salt is precious, often gathered from evaporated seawater in shallow clay pans. Historians debate how consistent the Viking supply routes were for this mineral. Some suggest communities had dedicated salt makers. Others think it was always traded. Either way, you ration it carefully. A fly buzzes near the hearth. You wave it off. The baby is asleep now, so you gently place her in a basket lined with fur. She stirs, but doesn't wake. You return to the kitchen area and begin steeping herbs for the noon drink. Not tea, but a warm mix of water, dried raspberry leaves, and a pinch of chamomile. If someone catches a cough later this week, you'll boil angelica root. Angelica grew well in the north and was prized like ginger in Asia, though whether it truly cured anything, well, that depends on which medieval healer you ask. Suddenly, a knock on the doorpost. It's your neighbor, Ingrid, asking if you can spare a scoop of rye. You trade her for smoked cheese and chat for a while, both of you kneeling beside the hearth. You talk about whose goats are pregnant, how someone's roof leaked in last week's rain, and, lowering your voice, how Thorleif came home late again. Gossip, but practical gossip. Who's sober? Who's cheating? Who's got a stash of foreign spices? It's not just talk, it's intelligence. You tell Ingrid about a dream you had, where your longhouse flooded and you floated down a fjord on a barrel. She laughs and tells you that dreams about water mean change is coming. Or death. Or possibly rain. She's not sure. She winks, and you both chuckle. As she leaves, you catch your reflection in the bronze ladle hanging on the wall. Distorted, of course, but you notice the flour streak across your cheek and the line forming at your brow. No time for vanity here. But still, it reminds you. You're not just a cook or a cleaner or a child wrangler. You are the center of this household, holding chaos in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. You pick up the grain basket and haul it into the storage nook, double-checking the sacks of dried peas and onions. You mutter counts to yourself. You have enough food for 12 more days if the weather holds, and the men bring back fish. If not, well, you've stretched less into more before. Your stomach growls. You take a bite of leftover flatbread and wash it down with watered ale, because yes, even women drank ale, often more than water, which wasn't always safe. Some scholars suggest Viking ale was barely alcoholic, more like fermented grain tea, but others argue it could be quite strong, depending on who made it. The fire crackles. The baby sighs in her sleep. And you, surrounded by smoke, salt, grain, and gossip, press your hands against your lower back and exhale that it's only midday. You're back at the loom now. The rest of the house buzzes like a hive. Dogs barking, kids shrieking, someone arguing outside about a misplaced axe. But here in your weaving corner, there's a rare moment of rhythm. Left hand, shuttle. Right hand, tighten. Repeat. The warp threads hum faintly as you work, and you start to forget how sore your knees are from kneeling at the corn earlier. Your loom is upright, built from 2 posts and a crossbeam, with loom weights made from carved stones or baked clay dangling like sleepy bells. Historians once believed Viking women mostly sewed clothing from imported fabric, but textile finds in Birka and Oseberg burial sites prove you made almost everything yourselves, by hand, with endless patience. Some of the patterns were so intricate that modern weavers still struggle to reproduce them. Were they purely decorative, or did they have meaning? Scholars are still debating that. You reach down to rub your wrist. It's starting to ache again. You've been weaving this same length of wool for days now. Tablecloth? Trade cloth? Winter tunic? You haven't decided yet. The pattern is simple enough. Black and gray, with a border of ochre-dyed wool. The dye came from crushed lichens that you boiled with stale urine. Yep, Viking fashion had interesting ingredients. The baby has finally drifted into deep sleep in her fur-lined basket. The toddler is playing with carved wooden animals in the corner, mostly cows and chickens, with one surprisingly buff bear your husband whittled when he was pretending not to nap last week. You keep weaving. Your hands know this dance. Suddenly, there's a familiar creak outside. The door opens, and Ingrid steps back in, again. She's not here for Rye this time. She's brought her own spindle and distaff and drops onto the bench beside you. You exchange tired smiles and begin spinning wool together. As the fibers twist between your fingers, the conversation starts. "Have you heard what happened at Bjorn's house?" she says. You raise an eyebrow. "He fell off the roof again?" "No, worse. His wife caught him sneaking dried fish out of the trade box. She says he's been selling it to passing merchants for silver behind her back." You both gasp. "Scandal." You lean in, letting your wool slack a little. "Did she say what she'd do?" "She threw him out. He slept in the goat shed." Now you're both laughing so hard the spindle nearly slips from your hand. There's something sacred about this moment. Spinning, weaving, laughing. You're not just producing textiles. You're stitching together the social fabric. If the men bond over raids and axes, this is how you bond. Thread by thread, secret by secret. And it's not just gossip. You exchange recipes, remedies, birth stories. Ingrid gives you a tip for keeping moths out of your wool. Hang dried sea kelp above the storage chest. You tell her about a new stitch you learned from a visiting Sami woman. So neat it looks like it was made by a god with tiny fingers. You talk about religion too. Sometimes in whispers, sometimes boldly. "Do you think Freya hears us more than Thor?" Ingrid asks. "I mean, we actually talk to her." You nod. "I light a candle for her when I weave. Just in case." Freya, goddess of love, fertility, and war, is a complex figure, worshipped fiercely, yet unevenly documented. Some scholars argue she was the most widely revered deity among Viking women. Others say her prominence was exaggerated by later Christian scribes. No one really knows. But for you, she's there, in the thread, in the children, in the bread dough rising on the hearth. You and Ingrid keep spinning until the light slants hard through the smoke hole. Shadows stretch across the longhouse floor. Time to start thinking about the evening meal. You part with a squeeze of hands and a shared groan about back pain. The baby's awake now, looking around with that fuzzy confusion only babies have. You scoop her up and press your nose to her head. She smells like wool and ash and something impossibly sweet. You sway side to side, bouncing gently, humming a song your own mother used to hum. Later tonight, you'll finish this wool bundle, fold it neatly, and set it on the high shelf to stay clean. With any luck, the men will come home with enough fish for a proper stew. If not, well, barley again. Outside, a child screams. Not yours, thankfully. You lean out the doorway and spot a small pack of kids playing Viking versus Troll, using sticks as spears. You smile. One of them, barefoot in the grass, yells, "You can't kill me. I'm already dead," and launches himself off a rock with heroic enthusiasm. You shake your head and head back in. The longhouse still smells of wool, salt, and smoke. Your wool work's not done, but your heart's a little lighter now. Sometimes, this chaotic, dusty, fish-scented life feels like a blessing. And sometimes, it just smells like goat. There's a myth, Probably told by people who've never shared a roof with 5 other humans, 2 goats, and a basket of semi-feral chickens, that Viking homes were peaceful, warm, rustic, quiet. You, on the other hand, know the truth. Your longhouse sounds like a tavern inside a livestock market, narrated by shouting toddlers and creaky floorboards. The air smells like old fish, damp wool, wood smoke, and someone's feet. Possibly yours. Possibly not. You're standing in the center of it all, holding a ladle in one hand and a squawking hen in the other. She got in again. Of course she did. Your son is chasing his younger sister around the support pillar, both of them barefoot, both screaming. Your mother-in-law is in the corner muttering to herself about how, in her day, goats didn't come into houses. A goat is, in fact, chewing on your loom right now. You set the hen down, march over, and swat the goat away with a practiced flick of your apron. It doesn't even blink, just slowly relocates to chewing on a basket instead. You don't yell. You've learned yelling just adds to the volume. Instead, you move through the chaos with the skill of a seasoned sea captain steering a leaky boat in a storm. Keep moving. Keep breathing. Don't trip on the dog. Viking longhouses weren't divided into rooms, not the way modern houses are. There's a central hearth, sleeping platforms along the sides, and storage tucked into every possible corner. If someone snores, everyone hears it. If someone gets sick, you're all sick. If the baby cries at night, congratulations, your entire family now hates sleep. Archaeological digs have uncovered longhouses over 20 meters long, sometimes shared by extended families and animals. Historians still argue whether animals slept inside for warmth, or simply because fences weren't good enough to keep them out. You're pretty sure it's the latter. You grab the broom, basically just a bundle of twigs, and begin sweeping crumbs, feathers, and unidentifiable child debris into a wooden dustpan. A small child steps in it immediately. You sigh. He giggles. You don't. Outside, you hear a cartwheel creak, then voices, your husband and his brothers are back. They come stomping in, hauling baskets of fish, damp cloaks, and the smell of seaweed and sweat. They're laughing about something that involved a broken oar and a very angry swan. You don't ask. You do take the fish, though. That part is yours now. You gut them at the back of the house, on a flat board near the woodpile. The knife is dull, again, so it takes longer than you like. Gulls scream overhead. One swoops too low, trying to steal a fish head. You toss a pebble at it and mutter, "Not today." Back inside, your daughter is pretending the fire tongs are antlers. You gently take them away before she stabs someone in the face. Your husband is already snoring on the bench with his boots still on. You nudge him with your foot. No reaction. You throw a cloth over him and let it go. While the fish simmers in a pot with onions and wild herbs, you check the storage chest. The salted meat is holding. The dried apples from last fall are nearly gone. You mentally calculate how many turnips are left and whether you can stretch the butter supply to next week. This is your version of bookkeeping, done in your head, with astonishing accuracy, while 3 conversations and a goat battle happen around you. You step outside for a moment. The air smells sharp and clean, a break from the interior stew of smells. A neighbor waves from her yard, her hands red from washing linen in cold water. You wave back. Both of you know the other is exhausted. Both of you smile anyway. Inside again, the baby has pooped through her swaddling. You change her. Your middle child spills a jug of water. You mop it with your apron. A visitor shows up unexpectedly, a cousin from a nearby farm, here to just stop by and conveniently stay for dinner. You add more water to the fish stew. Your older son tells you he saw a raven circle the longhouse 3 times. That means something, he says. You nod. Yes, it means we need to fix the roof. He frowns. You pat his head. Some scholars believe the Norse viewed ravens as omens, messengers of Odin, watchers of fate. Others think they were just opportunistic trash birds. You believe both can be true. Night falls, and you light the oil lamp, a small dish of fish oil and cloth wick. The shadows stretch long and flicker across the walls. One of the kids is asleep on a bench. Another is curled up next to the dog. The goat is finally outside. Maybe. You exhale. The house is loud, smelly, chaotic, and entirely alive. Somehow, you kept it all going. No one is bleeding. Everyone is fed. You even got the fish deboned. That it's not elegant. It's not peaceful, but it's home. You tie a knife to your belt. Not because you're heading into battle, at least not the kind with swords and shields, but because you're going out alone. Past the fences, past the last goat, into the woods and hills where the wind sounds a little too much like breathing. You pull your cloak tighter and glance back at the longhouse. The children are playing by the wall, the dog is barking at a log again, and your mother-in-law is lecturing someone about mold. Everything's normal. For now. You step out onto the narrow path and head toward the ridge. Today's errand is simple: collect herbs. But even simple errands can get complicated in a world where the line between safe and dangerous is a little blurry and always moving. Viking women didn't just stay inside, contrary to the cozy image painted by some romantic historians. You handled much of the outdoor work, too: foraging, tending kitchen gardens, gathering wood, even managing the smaller livestock when your husband was away. Many women knew the forest as well as the fishermen knew the tides. You included. You reach the edge of the woods. The trees rise like quiet sentinels. Underfoot, the moss gives a soft squish. You spot some angelica by the stream and kneel to cut it. The root will dry well for tea. Next, yarrow for wounds. A few wild onions, if you're lucky. You hum to yourself as you pick, partly out of habit, partly to make sure anything else out here knows you're coming. Because here's the thing. Sometimes, men with axes come down the path. Not raiders, at least not the kind from your village. But you've heard stories. Strangers who come with smiles and trade goods, then return weeks later with swords and bad intentions. Traders from the east, mercenaries from across the sea, even rogue Norsemen exiled from other settlements. You don't live in fear, exactly, but you don't walk unarmed either. The knife at your belt is small, but sharp. You've used it for gutting fish, skinning rabbits, cutting rope, and once slicing a man's hand when he grabbed your arm too tightly at a market. He let go. Quickly. You pause at a bend in the trail. A crow watches you from a branch. You nod at it. You've been told they carry souls. Or gossip. Possibly both. You move on. Along the way, you check a snare line your oldest son set. Nothing caught today, but the traps are still intact. He'll be glad. You fix the twine on one, then stop at a low bush, cloudberries. A rare treat. You pick a handful, taste one. Sweet. Tart. Like sunshine and dirt. You finally return to the house mid-afternoon, cloak damp from mist, herbs bundled in a twist of linen. The door swings open and a blast of warm, chaotic air hits your face, with smoke, stew, and the unmistakable scent of someone burning oats. Your husband looks up from sharpening a spearhead. See anything out there? You shake your head. Just a crow. And some cloudberries. He grins. You keep those berries safe. Kids'll sniff them out faster than wolves. You hide the bundle behind the herb shelf. Later, while you sort plants by the hearth, a knock comes. A trader, passing through. Foreign clothes. A little too friendly. You don't smile, but you offer ale. He asks about your goats. You answer, briefly. He looks at your daughter too long. You place your hand near the knife on your belt. Your husband returns from the barn. His smile is sharp as a fishhook. The trader finishes his drink and leaves with exaggerated politeness. Afterward, you and your husband say nothing, but he sets a spear by the door before bed. It's not always dangerous, but it's never not. And still, there's beauty. As dusk settles, you crush dried mint into boiling water. The smell fills the room. You dab a bit of salve on your daughter's scraped knee. You light a small candle and whisper thanks to Freya, and to the land, and to the herbs that chose to grow where you could reach them. Some historians still debate the role women played in spiritual protection of the home. Were you priestesses, herbalists, something in between? No one agrees. But in the quiet of your longhouse, surrounded by children and firelight, and the soft snore of your dog, you feel powerful. You didn't swing a sword today, but you protected your family. And that counts. You didn't mean to become a manager. It just sort of happened. Maybe it was the moment your second child was born, and you realized you could track feeding times, and smoke a fish, and remember Who borrowed your firewood last week? Maybe it was when your husband said, "We're out of turnips," and you replied, "No, we're not. There are 12 under the back stairs, and one of them has a funny spot, so cook that one first." And you were right. Now, here you are, overseeing the entire household like a general in wool socks. This afternoon you're in the storage alcove, squatting next to sacks of dried peas, counting bundles of herbs, and mentally recalculating how many meals you can stretch before anyone starts asking about trade day. Your fingers brush over bundles of dried fish, barley, pickled onions, and the single precious jar of imported black pepper that's mostly used for bragging rights. Historians still argue whether Viking women were legally in charge of the household, or whether they just acted like it because no one else wanted to deal with goat inventory. But one thing's clear. You keep the whole operation running. You stand, brush the dust from your knees, and walk through the longhouse, checking off tasks in your head. The fire's burning hot, which means less wood needs hauling. The cheesecloth is hanging where it should be. The kids haven't started a turf war with the neighbor's goats yet. Your husband fixed the broken door latch, finally, after 3 weeks of subtle hints and one very unsubtle glare. Out by the animal pen, you spot your eldest daughter trying to corral a sheep with a stick. She's doing a pretty decent job. You watch for a moment, then wave her over. "Sheep's limping," you say. She nods. "I saw. I was going to bring her inside." You give her a nod of approval that carries years of Viking mom authority. Do it now before she gets worse. And keep the dog out. He keeps eating the salve. She runs off, her braids bouncing. Back inside, you glance at your husband's cousin, who's lounging by the fire carving what is technically a spoon, though it looks more like a wooden blob. He's been visiting for 4 days. No one invited him. You assign him to churn butter. He groans. You hand him the churn anyway. You make a note to speak with your husband later about getting that cousin a productive hobby, like boat building. Far, far away. You finally sit for a moment, just a moment, on the bench beside the hearth. Your hands automatically reach for the mending pile. There's a sock with a hole in it, a tunic with a loose seam, and a leather strap that needs stitching. You start with the sock. Your needle flicks through wool while your mind runs its daily marathon. Who needs more mittens? What's the next full moon? Are you low on salt? Did you ever finish skimming the goat's milk? Has the bee wax been thinned out with anything suspicious? Oh, and someone needs to talk to the neighbor about that chicken that keeps wandering in like she pays rent. You're the household accountant, tailor, nurse, scheduler, chef, conflict mediator, and small-scale economist. You manage people, animals, tools, and time. If the longhouse were a ship, you'd be both the navigator and the one bailing water out of the bottom. Evenings are your audit time. You do a walkthrough with your eyes. Are the kids in bed? Is the smoke hole clear? Has someone taken in the drying clothes? Are all tools accounted for? Did someone finally clean up that fish head? You check them one by one, sometimes with a nod, sometimes with a "why is this here?" glare. Your husband sits beside you as you mend. "We should visit my sister's farm next week," he says. You don't look up. "What day?" After trade day." You pause. "That's slaughter day." He scratches his beard. "Oh, right. You keep stitching." Women like you weren't just wives in the passive sense. You had agency. You ran property. You handled contracts. Some women even ran farms alone when their husbands died or never came back from a voyage. Were they exceptions? Maybe, but they weren't rare. Some historians still puzzle over how much influence Viking women truly held. Were they equal or just important? From your seat by the fire, sock nearly mended, the answer seems obvious. The baby fusses from her basket. You set your work down, scoop her up, and rock her gently as the longhouse settles into its nighttime hum. Crackling fire, distant snore, wind against the door. You shift the baby to your shoulder, pat her back, and look around. Everything's accounted for. Everyone's where they should be. Even the cousin is still churning. You smile. You dream in wool and smoke. The longhouse is quiet now, and in your sleep, your mind drifts to the last trade day. Salted fish for wool, a few iron nails, a length of dyed ribbon you didn't need but wanted. And somehow that becomes a dream about sailing. and your husband's cousin falling overboard while still clutching the butter churn. When you wake, it's still dark. The baby's warm against your side, and the fire's low, but alive. You don't get up yet. You listen. No coughing. No goat noises. No one shouting, "Where's the salve?" It's a rare kind of silence. Brief, brittle, beautiful. Eventually, you rise and move through the long house like a ghost, straightening things, checking the embers. You pick up a half-finished cloak someone left draped on a stool. You fold it neatly, wondering for the 100th time why no one else seems physically capable of folding a cloak. By dawn, the household starts to stir. You're already ahead. Later that morning, a guest arrives. You saw the silhouette long before they got close. A woman on foot, wrapped in a heavy cloak, leading a pony carrying 2 bundles. You step out into the yard, hand shielding your eyes, and watch her come. She waves. You wave back, that it's your cousin from the coast. She hasn't been inland in 2 years. You greet her with a tight hug and a half-serious accusation. You didn't send word. She grins. What? And ruin the surprise. The kids swarm her as soon as they realize she's brought dried apples, sea beads, and at least one riddle they've never heard before. She settles in like she never left. That evening, you two sit by the fire, shelling peas, feet up, the baby napping between you. You talk in that special way Viking women do. 3 conversations at once, circling around stories and sidestepping the truly awful parts with a well-placed "you know how it is." She leans in suddenly, lowering her voice. You heard about Solveig? You raise an eyebrow. Which Solveig? The one with the boat. Oh, that's Solveig. What now? She's sailing it herself. You nearly drop your handful of peas. No, she is. With a crew? Just her. Well, her and that girl from Orkney with the scarred hand. You sit back. Gods. Her father would have. Burst into flames? Oh, he did. You smile. Good for her. Your cousin chuckles. She's stopping through in a few weeks. Says she's looking for wool and women with steady hands. You think about that. You do have steady hands. And more wool than you need. You glance at the baby, curled up like a kitten. You glance at the hearth. You glance at the sky through the smoke hole. Stars beginning to prick through the purple dusk that you're not going anywhere. Not yet. But maybe someday. You say nothing. Just toss another handful of peas into the bowl and listen to the stories roll on. We often imagine Viking life as a parade of swords and storms and longships crashing into foreign shores. But most of life happened here, in places like this, run by women like you. You might not be in the sagas, but you're the reason they got written.